Assalamu alaikum. In the last lecture, we talked about best practices of software configuration management. Today, we will talk about software configuration management plan that has been used by tailoring the IEEE standards configuration management plan. And we will also talk about a software quality assurance plan that is based on the IEEE recommendations. So let's begin our discussion on the SCM plan that is based originally on the IEEE recommendations, but has been or can be actually modified and customized based on the needs of a project. First, I will list the sections, and then we'll discuss briefly each section before we start talking about the SQA plan. The first section of an SCM or software configuration management plan is introduction. The second section is reference documents, definitions, and acronyms. The third section is titled management. Fourth section is titled activities. Fifth section is resources. Then we have plan maintenance, and finally plan approval. So let us now take each section and discuss what is described in these sections. The first section, as I mentioned, is introduction. Introduction provides simplified overview of the configuration management activities so that those approving, performing the SCM activities, or interacting with the software configuration management plan can obtain a clear understanding of the SCM plan. So this gives us an overview of what the SCM activities are. It explains the purpose and contents of the configuration management plan, that is the methodical storage and recording of all software components and deliverables during development and after release also. The SCM plan documents methods to be used for identification of software items, that is the first function of the SCM, control and implementation of change, that is version control and change control, and recording and reporting change implementation status. All of this information is described on a very high level in the introduction section of a software configuration management plan. The plan should describe methods for identification of software configuration items, control and implementation of changes, recording and reporting changes, and problem report implementation status, so that the status accounting and reporting mechanisms can be described, conducting the configuration audit, that is the activity of configuration audit is also described in the introduction section and in the plan also, and review and approval cycles as well as the approving authority or the board or committee or the person who's going to approve the configuration management plan, and identification of personnel responsible for configuration management. So the topics that I've just mentioned to you are the things that are covered in an SCM plan, and the introduction section basically provides an overview of the entire SCM plan. The second section of this document is reference documents, definitions, and acronym. This is the heading of the section. This section provides a complete list of documents referenced in this SCM plan. By definition, these documents should originate outside the scope of the project. Also included in this section is a glossary of terms and their definitions, and a list of project-specific abbreviations and acronyms. So if you carefully decompose this section, you can come up with 3 subsections titled reference documents, second is glossary of terms, and third is abbreviations and acronyms. In the first subsection, all the documents which are referenced in SCM plan are mentioned. The glossary of terms obviously lists the terminology, the definitions that are project specific and are used and are necessary for the reader of the SCM plan to understand. And the third subsection contains the abbreviations and acronyms. As you know that every application domain has specific abbreviations and acronyms which have different meanings outside of that application domain. So it is important to list such abbreviations and acronyms so that the reader does not create conflicting meanings or ambiguous meanings with respect to these abbreviations or acronyms. The third section of the SCM plan is titled Management. This section provides information describing the allocation of responsibilities and authorities for the software configuration management activities to organizations and individuals within the project structure. So if we discuss the subsections within the management section, the first is the organization subsection, which depicts the organizational context, both technical as well as managerial, within which the prescribed software configuration management activities are to be implemented. The next subsection in the management section is responsibilities, which describes the allocation of software configuration management activities to organizational units. The first subsection was the organization, and the second is the responsibilities, which describes the allocation of SCM activities to organizational units. The third subsection is titled Policies, Directives, and Procedures. This subsection, as is obvious from the name, documents any external constraints or requirements that are placed on the SCM plan by other policies, directives, or procedures, and these policies and directives and procedures must be mentioned in this subsection very clearly, and a detailed impact analysis should accompany the identification of external constraints so that conclusions can be reached, and if there are any conflicts that should be removed. The fourth section of an SCM plan is titled Activities, or this is the Activities section. This section identifies all functions and tasks required to manage the configuration of the software system as specified in the scope of the SCM plan. Both technical and managerial activities must be identified. So this is also a very important section of the SCM plan. The first sub-activity or subsection within this section is titled Configuration Identification. It is used to identify, name, and describe the documented physical and functional characteristics of the code, specification, design, or data elements to be controlled for the project. The plan must identify the items to be maintained in a configuration control system. This has obviously three important subsections of its own. They are titled as identifying configuration items, naming configuration items, and acquiring configuration items. Under the activities subsection, under the activities section, the second subsection is configuration control. Configuration control activities request, evaluate, approve or disapprove, and implement changes to software configuration items. These are the activities that we have discussed in change control processes. Changes include both error correction and enhancement in the software product. This section identifies the records to be used for tracking and documenting the sequence of steps for each change. And we have already discussed the change process, and we have already discussed a procedure for creating configuration management. So based on the description that I have provided to you, the subsections in this activity are requesting changes, evaluating changes, approving or disapproving changes, and implementing changes. And the process used for a specific project regarding these tasks is documented under these subsections. Under the activities section, we have another subsection titled Configuration Status Accounting. This is used to record and report the status of configuration items. The following minimum data elements should be tracked and reported to each configuration management. For each configuration management item: approved version, status of the requested changes, and implementation status of approved changes. So if the changes have been approved, how far they have been implemented, and what is remaining in the implementation. The next subsection is configuration audits and reviews. Configuration audits determine the extent to which the actual configuration management items reflect the required physical and functional characteristics. Configuration reviews may also be designed as a management tool used to ensure that software configuration baseline is established. So these are a very important mechanism for verification. Then the next subsection is interface control. It coordinates changes to the project's configuration management items with changes to interfacing items outside the scope of the SCM plan. So whenever and always there is a situation where certain elements are interfacing with those elements that lie outside the scope of the SCM plan, and all of those things will be documented under this subsection. The next subsection is subcontractor or vendor control subsection. For acquired software, that is software which has been obtained or bought from another organization, the software configuration management plan shall describe how the vendor software will be received, tested, and placed under software configuration management control of the buyer, that the SCM is maintained by the buyer or the acquirer. For both subcontracted and acquired software, the SCM plan must define the activities to be performed to incorporate the externally developed items into project configuration management and to coordinate changes to these items. So whenever you are buying software or you are selling software, those items which have been bought or sold, there needs to be a plan on how to perform changes in those components. Then we have the fifth section of the SCM plan, which is titled Resources. This section establishes the sequence and coordination for all software configuration management activities and all the events affecting the plan's implementation. The first subsection within this section is titled Schedules. Schedule information shall be expressed as absolute dates, as dates relative to other project activities, or as project milestones, or also as simple sequence of events. Graphical representation can be particularly appropriate for conveying this information. The idea is to convey schedules, and we can do that in absolute dates. We can do that in relative dates to specific project activities, like we can say that after 2 days of certain activity happening, or as project milestones, or as just sequence of events. So, but the conveying of scheduled information is very important, and that is done in this section of the software configuration management plan. The next subsection under resources is titled Resources. It identifies the software tools, techniques, equipment, personnel, and training necessary for the implementation of SCM activities. And so all of the things that are titled or that are considered resources are documented in this part of the SCM. Now we have the sixth section of SCM plan, and it is titled Plan Maintenance. This section identifies and describes the activities and responsibilities to ensure continued software configuration management planning during the life cycle of the project. This section of the SCM plan should state, number one, who is responsible for monitoring the SCM plan, whether it is being followed or not. Second, how frequently updates are being applied to the SCM plan. Third, how changes to an SCM plan are to be evaluated and approved. Now we are talking about changes in the SCM plan itself, and that is part of maintaining an SCM plan, ensuring that an SCM plan is a living document for a project. And finally, we need to ask how changes to an SCM plan are to be made and then communicated to all concerned. The changes in the SCM plan should be communicated to all departments that are part of a software project. Finally, in an SCM plan, we have plan approvals. This section describes the names and designees or the authorities who are responsible for approving SCM plan. And if the changes have to be made, those changes are also approved by the same authority. This brings to conclusion on our discussion regarding SCM plans. I would like to say a few words, however, before we move on to the next topic in today's lecture, that creating an SCM plan based on the policies and standards that are available, the policies of the organization that are the guiding principles for software configuration management. It is very important to have an SCM plan for every project, because the needs of every project will be different. But we also must keep in mind the considerations, the real-world considerations and best practices that we have already talked about regarding software configuration management. Software configuration management is a very important and integral part of software quality assurance programs in any organization. Without having a realistic and practical SCM activities, we cannot expect to develop high quality software which meets the needs of the customers, which can process and manage changes, because changes will be requested, changes will be necessary for the life of a software product, for the life of a high quality software product. And so SCM activities must be given proper time, proper allocation of resources. People with necessary skills must be hired to execute the software configuration management activities. Now, we will move on to the next topic of our lecture today, and that is software quality assurance plan. Every development and maintenance project should have a software quality assurance plan. And it's also SQA plan specifies its goals, the SQA or software quality assurance tasks to be performed, the standards against which the development work is to be measured, and finally the procedures and organizational structure of the project, whether that's a development project or it's a maintenance project. Now, just like SCM, I'm going to initially describe to you what are the different sections in an SQA plan. This is based on the IEEE standard template, but it can be and should be modified and customized depending on the need of the project. There are certain areas, certain sections which can be reduced or enhanced or even eliminated based on the needs of the project, budgets available, and the schedules. So let's now talk about the different sections, or I'll give you an overview of an SQA plan, and then we will talk about what is contained in each of the sections. The first is the purpose. Some can call it introduction also. The second section is reference documents, again, you can have abbreviations and acronyms and glossary of terms along with this section. The third is management. The fourth is documentation, followed by standards, practices, and conventions. There is another section titled reviews and audits, then software configuration management. Some SQA plans have a section on test, that is software tests. Then there's a section on problem reporting and corrective actions. There's a section on tools, techniques, and methodologies. Then there is media control, a section on supplier control, followed by a section on records collection, maintenance, and retention. So let us now talk about each one of these sections, what is contained in them, and I'll skip some of them because they're obvious and there's no need to go into much discussion on each section of the SQA plan. Let's take up the first one, and that's the purpose. This section documents the purpose of SQA plan for a project. It documents the goals, processes, and responsibilities required to implement effective quality assurance functions for the current project, for the project for which the SQA plan is being prepared or documented. This section can have a subsection titled Scope, which defines the scope of the software quality assurance plan in different activities of the software development life cycle and even through maintenance. So depending on the scope, depending on the project, if the project is development and maintenance, the scope should mention that. If the project is maintenance only, that should be mentioned in the scope subsection of the purpose. The second section is reference documents. This lists the documents referenced in the software quality assurance plan. You can also, depending on the template that you use, include glossary of terms or abbreviations and acronyms in section 2 of software quality assurance plan. The third section is management. This section describes the management organizational structure, its roles and responsibilities, and the software quality tasks to be performed. It can have four subsections titled Management Organization. Number 2 is Tasks. Number 3 is Roles and Responsibilities. And fourth is Software Assurance Estimated Resources. Now we will talk about each one of these subsections within the management section. The management organization section describes the support of entities, organizations, and personnel, relevant entities and roles that are of interest and applicable to this SQA plan and the software assurance effort, especially include project office and assurance management office. So all those entities and roles that are of special interest regarding this particular project with respect to software quality assurance are mentioned in this section. Then we have tasks. This subsection summarizes the tasks to be performed during the development, operations, and maintenance of the software. These tasks are quality assurance tasks, and they can be either in the form of product assessments or process assessments. These tasks are selected based on the developer's project schedule, software project management plan, and planned deliverables, contractual deliverables, and identified reviews. So all the tasks that are tagged as software quality assurance tasks are included, are documented in this subsection of the SQA plan. As I have said, that typically these tasks are of two types. There are product assessments and process assessments. So let's see what product assessments can be included. Peer review packages can be included. Document reviews can be included. Software development folders, software configuration management activities, and test results are considered as product assessment, while the process assessments include project planning, project monitoring and control, measurement and analyses, system or subsystem reviews, peer reviews, requirements management, software configuration management and configuration audits, test management, that is V&V, verification and validation, software problem reporting and corrective action, risk management, and supplier agreement management. So these activities are and can be included in the task subsection of software quality assurance plan. Now let's talk a little bit about roles and responsibilities. That's another section or subsection under the management section of software quality assurance plan. This subsection describes the roles and responsibilities of each software assurance person or personnel assigned to that project. There are two kinds of personnel, minimum, that should be assigned to software assurance in any software quality assurance program in an organization. First is the software assurance manager. This person is responsible for the software assurance aspects, which I'll talk about in a little while. And then we have software quality personnel. We had in the earlier part of this course talked about different assignments, different responsibilities that personnel belonging to a software quality assurance department have. And so there's no need to repeat all of that, but we need to document this in our software quality assurance plan. Another subsection in this management section of software quality assurance plan is software assurance estimated resources. What is software assurance? We can think of software assurance having three criteria which are in some sense overlapping because, and I'll talk about why these are overlapping. The three criteria are quality, safety, and reliability. And when we were talking about how software quality can be defined or what are the characteristics of software quality, we said that reliability and safety can be part of or are actually attributes of quality. And so when we say software assurance, we mean everything that software quality means, and in addition to, we focus more on safety and reliability aspects or attributes added to that as they carry in the quality and the word quality. So staffing to support software assurance activities is also important. and it should be documented in the SQA plan. However, the resources, like any other activity in the project, needs to be balanced against various project characteristics and constraints, including cost, schedule, maturity level of the providers, criticality of the software being developed, return on investment, and there are perceived risks, and there can be other factors ranging from project to project, and in some cases there are certain additional characteristics which arise only in case of certain projects. So these are the balancing factors or influencing factors that force a manager to balance the software assurance resources and with the other characteristics and other needs and other requirements of the software project. So it is then the responsibility of management to document the resources required, the resources that will be minimum available, and the maximum requirement. And so there needs to be a balance with all the activities that exist during the execution of a software project, whether they are technical activities or whether they are managerial activities, and both of them need to be balanced vis-a-vis cost and schedule and criticality of the project and so forth. So this was the section that again is very important part of the software quality assurance plan. The next section is the section titled documentation. This section identifies the minimum documentation governing the requirements, development, verification, validation, and maintenance of software that falls within the scope of this quality assurance plan or software quality assurance plans. The documentation is also dependent on the size of the project, the requirements of the customer, the resources, the availability of time, and the aspects related to cost. So every project does not have the same set of documentation, and for example, there are certain clients who require more documentation than another class of clients. For example, let's take government clients typically would require more documentation than than clients in the private sector. So this also varies from project to project, from domain to domain, and from organization to organization. Every document that is produced needs to be reviewed and assessed, and some of them have to be assessed by the software quality assurance personnel. Some of them are highly technical documents that can be reviewed by the concerned technical members of the team. If the technical documentation is reviewed by and assessed by non-technical members, then obviously the value added in that review or assessment would not be as great as if they were reviewed or assessed by technical staff. The non-technical staff in that situation can only verify that the language used has been correct, or the punctuation and the formal structure of the document has been adhered to. And that's also in itself a significant contribution, but not as significant as it would have been done by the technical people. So SQA staff reviews and assesses the quality of documents and technical people usually would assess and review the contents and the quality of contents and the correctness that is associated with a particular document. For example, let's take example of a requirement specification document, or we call that requirements document. The SQA personnel, if they review it, they can review it from the point of view of completeness, from the point of view of adherence to a standard of documentation and so forth. While only requirements engineers and domain experts would be able to see if the requirements captured therein are the need of the customer, and that they are not conflicting, and that they are not ambiguous, and that they are not incorrect or incomplete. So there are two different aspects to review and assessment. One is always the verification, the other is the validation. And so both of these need to be performed. And that the validation and verification aspects of every document that is produced in a project needs to be described and documented in the software quality assurance plan. Some documents are given to the customer, while others are not given to the and are retained by the development team for their own use. The focus on those documents which need to be given to the customer from readability point of view, from the correctness point of view, from the following of standards point of view need to be much more, and there need to be extra care in producing such document. For example, user documentation, user manual needs to be very well laid out so that the customer who's going to use that documentation to learn to use the software product faces no problems. And there are other documents like internal memos, internal notes or messages. The level of detail and accuracy in such documents need not be as much rigorous as in the prior case that I have mentioned. Then the next section is standards, practices, and convention section. This section highlights the standards, practices, quality requirements, and metrics to be applied to ensure a successful software quality program. This section specifies a minimum content of documentation standards, of logic structure standards, of coding standards, and of commentary standards. It has primarily two subsections. One is software quality program, which contains information about the software quality program, and the second section is standard metrics, which describes the metrics that will be collected as part of the software quality assurance program. The sixth section in software quality assurance plan is reviews and audits, and it discusses major project reviews conducted by the SQA staff and software team members. It can have the first subsection in this is titled Generic Review Guidelines, a set of guidelines for all formal technical reviews or inspections is presented and documented in this subsection, and it consists of conducting a review, the roles and responsibilities played by different participants of a review meeting or an inspection meeting. And there is another subsection that is titled as Review Work Products, where documents, forms, and lists are produced as a consequence of the inspection are listed. Then there is second subsection, which is formal technical reviews and inspections, a description of the specific character and intent of each major formal technical review or inspection conducted during the software process is documented and highlighted in this section. And the third subsection is SQA audit, a description of audits performed by the SQA group with the intent of assessing how well the SQA group and software engineering activities are being conducted on a project. So they follow a certain audit process in which they see if the standards have been followed and if the company's processes have been followed, and if there is a deviation, has that been approved and documented, and all that information is necessary to ensure that the process has been followed and the company does what it says it does. And that is another form of assuring customer about the commitment to quality that an organization has. Section 7 is titled Software Configuration Management, which provides a brief overview of the contents of the Software Configuration Management Plan, or we can just refer to the SCM plan, which has been developed as part of this project. We have talked about SCM plan earlier in the lecture today. The 8th section is on test. The SQA personnel will assure that the test management processes and products are being implemented as per the software management plan or test plan. These information can be documented in either documents, and this includes all types of testing of software system components as described in the test plan, especially during the integration testing and in the acceptance testing. So you can also refer to the testing plan in the SQA plan. The next section is titled Problem Reporting and Corrective Action. This section describes problem reporting mechanisms that occur as a consequence of the formal technical reviews or inspections that are conducted as part of the corrective actions and follow-up. This section also has subsections which are reporting mechanism, describes how and to whom problems are reported and escalated. Then there's a subsection titled Responsibilities, which describes who has responsibility for corrective actions and follow-up. Then there is data collection and evaluation, which describes the manner in which error or defect data are collected and stored for future real-time evaluation. So as you can see, that each section that we talk about has its significance related to quality assurance and assuring that in future projects we continue to improve the quality of the software products that we build. Last subsection in problem reporting and corrective action is statistical SQA or statistical software quality assurance, which describes the quantitative techniques that will be applied to error or defect data in an effort to discern trends and improvement. And I would refer to you on our discussion on inspections, where we had very specific information or discussion on what can be used for defect prevention if defects are found. The SQA plan also documents the tools, techniques, and methodologies that the SQA group uses. SQA group may choose to use specialized tools, techniques, and methods, and they are documented under the tools, techniques, and methodologies section of the SQA plan. Then we have section titled Supplier Control. It is the responsibility of the SQA personnel to conduct off-site surveillance activities of the supplier sites on software development activities. The SQA personnel will conduct a baseline assessment of the supplier's quality management system to ensure that the suppliers have quality processes in place. This initial assessment will help to scope the level of effort and follow-on activities in the area of software quality assurance as it relates to suppliers of software. And so SQA people not only need to be watchful of the development activities within the organization, but if the organization is buying software from other suppliers, they need to assess the processes used by the supplier, so that the entire effort, the entire product that has been developed or included in the software product is developed using high quality processes. There's another section which is titled Record Collection, Maintenance and Retention. SQA personnel will maintain records that document assessments performed on the project. Maintaining these records will provide objective evidence and traceability of assessments performed throughout the project's life cycle. Example records include the process and product assessments, assessment reports, completed checklists, the SQA activity schedule, metrics that are collected as part of the project effort, weekly status reports, etc. So this section also documents those kinds of documents, those kinds of things that will be maintained in our databases or in other forms throughout the life cycle of the project, and after that also, because this information will help other projects to learn from the execution of a software product, execution of a software project from quality point of view. So before we conclude today's lecture, I'd like to summarize that today we talked about two different but very important plans. Number one, we talked about software configuration management plan, and after that we talked about software quality assurance plan. Software quality assurance plan is a very important, vital and policy setting document for each project from quality's perspective, and this forces the development team and in fact the entire organization to keep their focus on software quality, keep their focus on achieving high levels of software quality, and also assures the customers that the organization and the project team and every individual is committed to developing a high quality software, and the customer should feel comfortable and happy about this, about the goal of the development team. So I now take leave of you and will meet you in the next lecture. Thank you very much.